Hello everyone, and welcome to the third live session for Modern Indian Architecture. This is an NPTEL course and the course instructor is Professor Prabhajit Singh Jani. He's a professor at IIT Roorkee. I am Shreya Shukla. I am the NPTEL course TA for this course. I am a PhD scholar at IIT Roorkee currently. We will wait for 5 minutes for others to join, and even if nobody joins, we'll start the session so that people who look at the video later on the YouTube links, they can see and go through the assignments. Today we will be doing the assignment for week 3. So It's 6:05 now. We'll start with the session now. So, hello again, everyone. Uh, we're doing live session for Modern Indian Architecture today. Today we will be doing the assignment of week 3. These are all previous year assignments. These are not this year's assignment. The course instructor for this NPTEL course is Professor Prabhjot Singh Chani, and I am Shreya Shukla. I am currently a PhD scholar at IIT Roorkee, and I am the NPTEL course TA for this course. So we know by now, because this is third session, we know what the course outline is and what we are talking about in this particular course and what has been being taught. This is the general timeline that will be covered. Right now we are here at the first generation of Indian architects where we are learning how the first generation of Indian architects, all the architects who learned outside India at great schools in Harvard, MIT, and other good schools, how they came back to India and then applied their knowledge, what they had learned in Western countries, and applied that in India along with a very infusing it with Indian context and then applying it in India. So that is the part that is being covered right now in this that has been covered in this week 3. So the syllabus of week 3 was, so week 2 contained the first generation of architects who came back after studying from abroad, who came back to India, including Charles Correa, Doshi, and everyone. And so 3 parts were covered in the last week, 3 parts were covered in this week, 4, 5, and 6. And then impact of Western architects, one part was started. So Western architects, there are a lot of architects who have had a huge impact on Indian architecture, specifically Indian modern Indian architecture. Most importantly, Le Corbusier, with his planning of Chandigarh. So that is what is will be discussed in detail in impact of Western architects, Le Corbusier, part 1 and part 2. In detail, his architecture style, his planning style, how he designed the complex, what are the important features of those buildings, and the planning style, and all those parts would be covered in these two. So we'll start with our first question for today. Excuse me. Who was the first head of the department of School of Planning at CEFT 1972? B.V. Doshi, Christopher Benninger, Laurie Baker, and J.A. Stein. So, just to briefly go through this, CEFT, the full form for which is Center for Environmental Planning and Technology, it was established as the School of Architecture in 1962 by the Ahmedabad Education Society, AES, followed by the School of Planning, School of Building Science and Technology, and School of Interior Design in 1972, 1982 and 1991 respectively. And these were established with aid from Ministry of Human Resource Development, Government of Gujarat, and the Ford Foundation. So CEFT is a private university in Ahmedabad, Gujarat, and the first part of CEFT that was established was School of Architecture in 1962, and then School of Planning was set up in 1972, School of Building Sciences was set up in 82, and then School of Interior Design was set up in 91. B.V. Doshi was the founder director of the School of Architecture from 1962 to 72, and along with Bernard Cohn, he was an American educated Frenchman. He joined Doshi in co-directing CEFT Ahmedabad at that time. And on the invitation of B.V. Doshi in 1971, Christopher Benninger resigned from his tenure post at Harvard. So he was working as a professor at Harvard, Christopher Benninger at that time, Harvard School of Design. And then on the invitation of B.V. Doshi in 1971, he shifted to Ahmedabad, India, and as a Ford Foundation advisor to Ahmedabad Education Society, the society which actually set up SEP. And then he founded the School of Planning here in 1972, and he became the first HOD of School of Planning at SEP. So our answer is Christopher Benninger. Question 2. In Middle East region, Jali work is known as Bab, Makhzana, Shazara, Mashrabia. So I think everybody is well aware of what actually is a jali, because it's such a common term that we use in our daily language, and it's such a common Indian element which we see in a lot of types of different architecture all over the India, specifically in regions with hot climate or hot and humid climate or warm and humid climate. So what is a jali? A jali is the term for a perforated stone or latticed screen. Lattice means basically a lattice is you have one shape, and then you create a whole structure of having that shape repeated. That is called a lattice. So it's a perforated stone. Perforation means holes in a screen. So it's either a stone which is perforated or it is a latticed screen. It usually with an ornamental pattern constructed through the use of calligraphy, geometry, or natural patterns. This form of architectural decoration is common in Indo-Islamic architecture and more generally in Indian architecture. It is closely related to mashrabia in Islamic architecture. And the purpose of jali is that it allows light and air while minimizing the sun and the rain, as well as providing cooling through passive ventilation. The holes are often nearly the same width or smaller than the thickness of the stone, thus providing structural strength. It has been observed that humid areas like Kerala and Konkan have larger holes with overall lower capacity than compared with the dry climate regions of Gujarat and Rajasthan. And these are few of the images that I have added of jali. That's a very traditional jali image that I have added along with the arch. It's a part of an Indo-Islamic architecture. You can see geometric patterns over here, how they have been carved in stone. And in the second picture over here, you can see it's a very contemporary use of jali with the in this use. So mashrabia and jali are very similar, but how are they different? It's just in the typical design. So mashrabia or mashrabia is an architectural element which is characteristic of traditional architecture in the Islamic world and beyond. It is a type of projecting oriel window. Oriel window is basically a bay window. A bay window, you can say, is an oriel window. A window that is projected out a little, that's an oriel window. So usually mashrabia is an oriel window, that is that it's a bay window, and it is enclosed with carved wood lattice work located on the upper floors of a building, sometimes enhanced with a stained glass. It was traditionally used to catch wind and for passive cooling. And another important feature of mashrabia is that the holes in mashrabia are very very small as compared to the jali work. In jali work still we have bigger sized holes or perforations. In mashrabia the holes are very very small, but the function is same, to let light come and to let wind come for passive cooling. And the structure is however a little different. For example, jali can be used just as a screen, is usually used just as a screen, while mashrabia is a part of a projected bay window or an oriel window. And the mashrabia term has it's not confirmed where the term comes as a origin, but it was derived. There are two origin theories of the term. One was that it is derived from the Arabic word sharaba, which means to drink, and because the space was used, it was called mashrabia because this space was used for a small wooden shelf where the drinking water pots were stored. And in another theory, the original name was originally called mashrafia, which was derived from the verb shrafa, meaning to overlook and to observe. So it's conflicting where the origin of the word mashrabia is from, but however the other word mashrafia makes more sense to me, because these small bay windows or oriel windows were used by women to look outside or look into the courtyard because of a lot of structural social construct of the society in Islamic world. So our answer is Mashrabiya. Third, who gave the initial plan of Chandigarh? Albert Mayer and Matthew Nowicki, Lutyens and Baker, Le Corbusier, B.V. Doshi. So this is what few of the original plans of Chandigarh look like. I'm not sure if everybody is well aware of it, but if you do a simple Google search or if you go through the lectures that's these NPTEL lectures, you'll see that the Chandigarh plan is a typical gridiron pattern plan. I also have one image later in the slides I'll show you. It's a typical gridiron plan. Gridiron plan as in that it has orthogonal, that's in straight lines, and divided the whole city into sectors, these straight lines, and then those sectors are acting like a typical, you can say, mohalla or a neighborhood, which has all kinds of services given in that. And it is also a super block. It has all, they have also used the super block concept, that vehicular movement, major vehicular movement would be restricted outside the super block, and internally only pedestrian or cycle and other movements would be allowed. So that is the current plan of Chandigarh that Le Corbusier has designed. But these are few of the earlier examples of when this whole idea of how to design Chandigarh was going on. So at that time, Albert Mayer and Matthew Nowicki were invited to prepare a plan for Chandigarh, and they gave these ideas for the plan of Chandigarh, and which is a contradiction in itself, that because they both are American architects and American cities have a very strict or very rigid gridiron planning. So it was very different to see them give a more circular or a curved plan for Chandigarh. So you can see the first image, the image on the left was the plan given by Albert Mayer. So it's a, in this plan you can see it's a fan shaped plan, it's a very curved shaped plan, and the roads and the park, the green part is the park and the yellow part is the roads. So the roads and the park, they follow the contours and watercourse. That's why these look very organic here because he has followed those contours and watercourses to plan it that way. And the black square that you see in this plan is the city center, and uh, the idea that the city is divided into super blocks with green belts was used by Le Corbusier later. So this initial plan, like you see, it's a curved plan, but the idea of using super block and the idea of using green belts, Le Corbusier took these ideas and he used them in his plan. However, he changed the plan to an orthogonal grid. And on the image that you see on the right, that was Matthew Nowicki's leaf plan for Chandigarh. It was an alternative that he proposed. He thought that a city had an everyday function and a holiday function to perform. And for the holiday function, Chandigarh, he proposed to make the part of the leaf stalk a vast area for sports and culture. So basically there would be a plan of Chandigarh, and then there would be a leaf-like thing. For example, how the leaf grows from a branch. He wanted one leaf kind of thing to grow out from the city of Chandigarh, which would be the holiday function, which would include sports and cultural activities. That was his initial idea. So these were the initial plans, and why they were dropped was because after Matthew Nowicki actually died in 1950, and after his death, Albert Mayer also withdrew from designing the plan. So then it was given to Le Corbusier, who then worked on their initial plans and created a very typical orthogonal grid over in Chandigarh. So our answer is Albert Mayer and Matthew Nowicki. 4. Identify the architect of Newman Hall, Ahmedabad. Charles Correa, B.V. Doshi, Hasmukh Patel and Le Corbusier. So this is what Newman Hall looks like. What is Newman Hall? Newman Hall is a hostel for priests of St. Xavier's Mission. It was built in 1968 by Hasmukh Patel, who was the founder of HCP, a very prestigious design firm in Ahmedabad, which is currently being headed by Bimal Patel right now. It is spread over a built-up area of 3,740 square meter, and it's a three-story structure, and it is organized in an H plan. If you can see the plan over here, you can see one line, two line, and then those two blocks are connected by a corridor, so that's why it's called an H plan. And the two blocks of individual cells open into common verandas, and they overlook an inner quadrangle. So all the rooms, they open to a veranda or a corridor, and that corridor is looking towards the quadrangle. Quadrangle is basically any shape with four sides, typically a square or a rectangle. That's why they've written quadrangle. And the corridor that connects these two blocks, it's actually a three-tiered bridge which links the two blocks to the vertical circulation core and a separate common room also. And there is a chapel also designed in this complex because it was designed for the priests of Saint Xavier's mission. So the chapel is designed as a small freestanding simple circular brick. So this is a plan of the ground floor. I think another floor, first floor. So ground floor, there is a square chapel, and it is designed as a small freestanding simple circular brick structure, and it is placed on the central axis of the encircled courtyard, and it completes the enclosure of the quadrangle, which is a pleasant space with casually planted shady trees and bougainvillea. And you can see in this building also there is a lot of exposed brickwork, and what the chapel is basically the uh, square structure that you see on the right of the plan, on the left hand side of the plan, is where the chapel is. It's a typical, it's not typical, but it's a circular shaped chapel, and it has exposed brick, like the entire building you can see has exposed brick. And these corridor areas that have been given in both the blocks, they are for dual purposes. One is to provide access to the rooms, of course, of access to services, access to rooms, and second is ritual ambulatory spaces. Ritual ambulatory spaces, as in a lot of religions, especially in Hinduism and also in Christianity. In Hinduism, we have parikrama that we do around the temple. In Christianity, they also have some things like processions. So these wide corridors actually give them a space to carry on their processions. So that's what this space serves as a dual reason. So our answer is Hasmukh Patel. Western architects that settled in India. Western architects that settled in India: Christopher Benninger, J.A. Stein, Laurie Baker, or all of these. So I'll briefly talk about three of these super famous architects, especially who have contributed really a lot to the Indian architecture, Indian modern architecture. So Christopher Charles Benninger, he was an architect and urban planner. He was born in US in 1942, but he permanently migrated to India in 1971. Benninger is noted for his contribution to the evolution of critical regionalism. Critical regionalism will be covered in, I think, the coming few weeks lectures, and it's a very important aspect of Indian architecture and sustainable planning in India. His education was from Harvard GSD, Harvard Graduate School of Design, and MIT. And his notable buildings in India are Center for Development Studies and Activities, Pune, Samudra Institute of Maritime Studies, Azim Premji University, Bangalore, IIM Calcutta, YMCA International Campsite, Pune. So a lot of his work, you can see a lot of his buildings are in Pune, is because when he came back to India, first he came back as he set up this school of planning in CEPT on invitation of B.V. Doshi, and after that and he was in a HOD there also, and after that he shifted to Pune permanently, and that's why a lot of his buildings are in Pune. Then Joseph Allen Stein, J.A. Stein is Joseph Allen Stein. He was an American architect. He was born in US in 1912 and he moved to India in, oh sorry, it's written wrong, in 1952. In 1955, he was tasked with the planning of Durgapur. Durgapur is a city in West Bengal, along with Benjamin Polk. He is noted for designing several buildings in Lodhi Estate in central Delhi, and those that area is now nicknamed as Tainabad because he designed most of those buildings in Lodhi Estate. His education is from University of Illinois, Chicago. His notable buildings in India include IIC, India International Centre Delhi, IHC, Indian Habitat Centre Delhi, Triveni Kala Sangam, Australian High Commission's Chancery. All these buildings are in Delhi, and then IIM Kozhikode. Then Lawrence Wilfred Laurie Baker. So that's the whole name of Laurie Baker, Lawrence Wilfred Laurie Baker. He was a British architect and he was born in 1917 in Britain and he moved to India in 1945. He is renowned for his initiatives in cost-effective, energy-efficient architecture and designs that maximize space, ventilation and light. He is known for his exceptional brickwork techniques and he is very famous for using wrap-tab boards specifically and in a lot of buildings in Kerala, including the Laurie Baker Centre. And his education is for Birmingham's Institute of Art and Design, Birmingham, UK. And the notable buildings he has in India include Laurie Baker Centre, again in Kerala, Indian Coffee House, Kerala, Centre for Development Studies in Trivandrum, Kerala, School of Drama and Fine Arts Theatre, Thrissur, Kerala, Centre for Development Study, Trivandrum. So, yeah, so all these three architects, they are were, either American or British, and they were born in US or Britain, and then they came back, not came back, they came to India and then they settled in India. In fact, Laurie Baker even took the Indian citizenship. In I think 1990s, he got Indian citizenship also. I'm not sure of Charles Benninger and Joseph Allenstein, but yeah, so they all came here and they all settled in here. So our answer is all of these. So they all came to India. They contributed majorly and significantly to the architecture of modern India, and yeah, they settled here for that. Question number 6. Architectural element used in Chandigarh High Court building that serves as aesthetic as well as climate responsive. So the question is asking that which of the following architecture element that has been used in Chandigarh High Court building that is actually dual purposed, as in that it is serving aesthetically also, that it is creating aesthetics also, and it is climate responsive. Climate responsive as in that it is responding to the climate of Chandigarh, which is again very similar to Delhi's climate, which is your uh, composite climate, hot summers and harsh summers, harsh winters. So our options are rosette window. Rosette window is a term for it's another term for rose window if I'm not wrong, and basically circular windows are called rosette window. They are a very common feature of churches, but they are used in other places also. So circular windows specifically with stained glass are called rosette windows or rose windows. But yeah, so open hand sculpture. So we all know that Chandigarh has this open hand sculpture, huge sculpture for that. Louvers and brise soleil. In the previous class, we covered on we had a few slides on louvers and brise soleil. I have added them again here, and I'll describe it again, just in case anybody who was not present in last session and is present today, or none of these. So this is what the facade of Chandigarh High Court building looks like. It's called Punjab and Haryana High Court now. It is the common high court for Indian states of Punjab and Haryana and the Union Territory of Chandigarh, based in Chandigarh, India. It is located in the capital complex of Chandigarh. The capital complex includes assembly building, secretariat, your hand sculpture, and a few other a few other buildings. The court building is known as the Palace of Justice. So when it was built, it was called Palace of Justice. It was designed by Le Corbusier, and several of his other works, they were inscribed as UNESCO World Heritage Sites in July 2016. And important features of this building is the use of exposed concrete, brutalism, the use of primary colors, which he has not done in any of his other buildings, even in Capitol Complex, but in High Court he has used primary colors, and just to create a contrast with the brutalist concrete that has been used in the building. Monumental scale, of course the scale is quite huge of these building. Deep verandas, so the idea of creating deep verandas was to again it's again one of the passive cooling techniques, deep verandas, to save the building from the harsh sun. And the more passive techniques we use in our buildings, the more climate responsive techniques we use in our building, the more the less load we have on, the less we rely on HVAC, or the less load we have on our air conditioning. And then monumental sun shading device, as you can see, the whole thing that is projected out, that's a monument. It's being called monumental because it's really huge in size, and it gives a lot of shade to the building. It's very evident over here. And use of brise-soleil and use of louvers. So what is brise-soleil? So brise-soleil, sometimes brise-soleil, it's a French word which literally means sunbreaker, to break sun. It's an architectural feature of a building that reduces heat gain within the building by deflecting sunlight. This is a system that allows low-level sun to enter a building in mornings or evenings and during winter, but cuts out direct light during summer. So brise-soleil is any kind of permutation combination of either vertical stripes or horizontal stripes or angled stripes arranged in any way, basically to provide sun shading, to not let harsh sun enter the building. So this is a shading device. It literally means sunbreaker. It's a French word, brise-soleil, and it is designed such that, and it is angled such that it allows the morning sun to enter, morning sunlight to enter, or the evening sunlight to enter, and even the winter sunlight to enter, but it doesn't allow the summer sun to enter or afternoon sun to enter. In what I mean when I say to enter and not to enter is that I wish I had a way of explaining it better. This is your building. So the movement of, I don't know if you can see it really or not. This is a building. The movement, this is conceptual, of course. The sun is not moving, we are moving, but if we consider it from the perspective of Earth, the sun is moving. So in the morning, the sun goes up from this like this. So it goes from this like this. It's like an arch kind of thing. So it goes like this, and it is also at an angle. So when we say that it allows the evening sun or the morning sun, is that the shading device is placed such that when sun is at a lower position, the sunlight enters the building, but when sun is at the upper position, peak in the afternoon, it creates shade. So that's how the concept of brise-soleil or any kind of shading device works. In the typical form, a horizontal projection extends from the sun side facade of a building, and this is in a typical form. In brise-soleil, the horizontal projections are extended, but that's just a typical idea. I have added few images on the right hand side. You can see these are the various examples of brise-soleil, various permutation combinations of vertical and horizontal stripes that can be used to create these ideas. In fact, if you see it in this Chandigarh High Court building, you see how those staggered things are built, and then those angled brise-soleil is built there. So it can be done anyhow, and this is most commonly used to prevent facades with a large amount of glass from overheating during the summer. So brise-soleil, in Indian context, we are using it so that we can create a climate responsive architecture, while in a lot of Western countries where brise-soleil is usually used, it is to you when this example I am taking again from the Center of Arts and Science in Valencia, where a lot of buildings, they are all cladded, all glass cladded, and then it also gets heated up in during summer peak time, because if you're the more the glass you use, the more it's going to heat up. So to avoid the overheating of building, Bristol features have been used in the buildings and centers of arts and science in Valencia, and it gives a nice, you can say, look to it, gives aesthetics to it also, and it functions well also. And we also talked about louver and overhang. So louver is basically a horizontal window blind or shutter. Louvers, the word louver is typically for a window shutter or a door shutter or a blind in which there are horizontal stripes, and you can move those horizontal stripes as per your need to allow light and air to enter, and it keeps out rain and direct sunshine. Kolkata has a lot of shuttered windows in their architecture, in their common architecture. When I was there, I lived there for 6 months. I saw louvered windows as a very common feature there, and it was there because Kolkata has a very humid climate. It is a hot, humid climate because it's near to sea. It is a port city, so that's why they have louvers, because when the wind comes, it allows the wind to go through if there is air, and if there is harsh sun, you can just shut it and the sun won't enter. And then overhangs is basically any kind of projection from any kind of shape of roof. A cantilever projection is called an overhang. So our answer is louvers and brise-soleil. So brise-soleil has been, and louvers also, they have used as aesthetic elements, and they work very well, specifically responding to Indian climate. So moving forward to the next question. Question number 7. This sector in Chandigarh was designed as the city center. I'm so sorry again. I don't know why I'm not getting better. It's the third week now and I'm still sick. I'm sorry if I'm pausing in between or to either drink water or anything. I'm really sorry for the disturbance. This sector in Chandigarh was designed as the city center. Sector 30, Sector 17, Sector 21, or none of these. So this is the typical plan of Chandigarh, like I mentioned in the previous question, that it's a typical grid plan. So if you see, I have marked a red box, and that is your sector 70. So Le Corbusier divide the whole city into 63 sectors, and the primary module of the city's design is a sector of size 800 cross 1200 meter each. Each sector is self-sufficient unit having shops, school, health centers, places of recreations and worships. And he conceived Chandigarh as analogous to human body. Analogous means basically uh, just like we have a heart, we have a brain, we have circulatory system. Similarly, he imagined the city of Chandigarh as analogous to human body, and he used those ideas. For example, he used head, the brain, to be the capital complex, and that is placed on the top. And then heart, he called the city center the heart, because all of the leisure active sorry, not leisure really, but all of the major business activities were happening in city center. He called the green valleys that he created as the lungs, all the open spaces, all the sector green areas, they were all the lungs. And the road network was the circulatory system. So that is where sector 17 is located, and sector 17 is the heart of Chandigarh. So you can see in this plan, there is a red spot marked in the plan of Chandigarh, and then we zoom it out, and here we have the sector 17 and a lot of buildings are over here in sector 17. So our answer is sector 17. Question number 8. What does V4 refer to in V7 hierarchy of traffic circulation. So, V7 hierarchy of traffic circulation is uh, it's a hierarchical circulation plan that was designed specifically for Chandigarh, where V7 are like 7 categories of streets. So this hierarchy initially, when it was planned, the first layout had five kind of categories. Later it was V7, and it's now called V7 hierarchy. But today, when I was not today, when today when I was reading more about it, I found out that now we have 8 hierarchies. So earlier V7 including footpaths and cycle paths, but now they have separated them, and now we have V8. We have 8 system. Yeah. So what does V4 refer to in V7 hierarchy to traffic circulation? Roads, neighborhood streets, access lanes, or shopping streets? It's a very blurry plan. I could not find a very clear plan. I'm sorry, but I was trying to search, but I could not find a clear plan on this. So, as I mentioned, this is the earlier plan. So you can see there are 5 categorization. Down below in the image, you see the legend V1, V2, V3, V4, V5, and they have marked those over here in the plan. So V1 is your fast roads which connects Chandigarh to other towns. V2 is arterial roads. V3 is fast vehicular roads. V4 is free flowing shopping streets. V5 is circulation roads, sector circulation roads. V6 is access roads to houses. V7 is footpaths and cycle tracks. And this is the classification that I found today in one of the official websites of Chandigarh. So V1 is roads connecting Chandigarh with other cities in the region. Madhya Marg and Dakshin Marg merge with V1s, leading to Kalka and Ambala respectively. V2 roads, the major avenues of Chandigarh, arterial roads with important institutional and commercial buildings located on them. And Madhya Marg, Dakshin Marg, Jan Marg, Himalaya Marg, Uttar Marg and Purv Marg all are major arterial roads, V2 roads. V3 roads, the corridor street for fast moving vehicular traffic. Every sector is surrounded by V2 or V3 roads. V4 roads, roads bisecting the sectors with shopping complexes located along their southern edges. So V4 roads are the roads which actually bisect or go through the sectors that have shopping complexes. V5 roads, roads meandering through the sector, giving access to its inner lands inside the sector. These roads are called V5 roads. V6 roads, roads coming off of V5s leading to the residential houses. V7 roads, footpaths through green belts enabling pedestrians to cross sectors without having to cross vehicular traffic and cycle tracks. And V8 are cycle tracks through green spaces. And buses are to ply along V2, V3 and V4 roads. So today I found out that another category like the cycle tracks through the green spaces have been added more to it. So I thought I'll add this information over here. So our answer is shopping streets, as we read here, that V4 is for the roads that go through, that bisect any sector with shopping complexes. So our answer is shopping streets. Question number 9. Why is Chanakyapuri, New Delhi called a hub for modern architecture representing countries? Number 1, presence of embassies of different countries with their architectural style, presence of many multiplexes, presence of modern shopping centers, presence of multi-cuisine food outlets. So it's asking Chanakyapuri is a neighborhood in New Delhi. Why is it called a hub of modern architecture representing different countries? So these are our options. So it's because Chanakyapuri is a hub of all the different embassies from around the world, and this I have picked up from the slide from the NPTEL lecture only, which gave a few examples of Swiss embassy. And when you look at, specifically if you look at Thai embassy, you see the center of the typical shikhara like thing or a dome like thing, that's very typical of Thai temple architecture. And when you look at Saudi embassy, which is located on the down left corner, they have arches, which is a uh, Islamic Islamic element. So they are using Islamic architecture elements. So likewise, all these embassies, they use some kind of elements from their from the countries they are representing. So that's why it is called a hub of modern architecture, which represents different countries. So why is Chanakya called a hub of modern architecture represent different countries? Because of the presence of different embassies of different countries, and these buildings have reflect the architectural style of those countries in a way or another. Last question for today. After this question, there were a lot of questions asked in the previous class, and I have done my research on them and I will answer those questions. And secondly, I would like to apologize because the last session was interrupted just like that, because my laptop actually started hanging and it was all frozen, and then the network issues happened, so the call cut just like that. And I apologize for that. And later when I could join the meeting, I saw everybody had left. So apologies for that. And these technical problems of course happen with online sessions. So we'll go with the last question, and then I'll discuss the previous year questions. Meanwhile, if anyone has any other kind of questions from this week's content, please drop it in the chat box. I would try to answer those questions as per my capabilities. In case I won't be able to answer them, I would read on it and I would answer it in the next class, which is the rule that I usually follow over here. So this architect came to India as head of the Department of Architecture in Bengal School of Engineering in 1952. Christopher Charles Benninger, Laurie Baker, Joseph Allen Stein, and Roger Anger. Joseph Allen Stein, we talked a little about Joseph Allen Stein in the previous question also. Few of those facts are copied over here, and I have added few more facts. So he was born in US in 1912 and he moved to India in 1952. In 1955, he was tasked for the planning of Durgapur along with Benjamin Polk. With many world crisis that was happening in 1950s, he felt the need to find a location or find a place where his talent as an architect could be more freely expressed, which is why he left US. And he first went to Mexico, and then he went to Europe, and then he came to India, where he taught at Bengal Engineering College, which is now called IIEST, Indian Institute of Engineering, Science and Technology, Shivpur. It's outside Calcutta. In 1952, he moved to India. He became the head of Department of Architecture at the Bengal Engineering Board, Calcutta, now IIEST Shivpur. He worked in New Delhi from 1955 onwards, starting with another American architect, Benjamin Polk, and even after retirement in 1995, he continued to design for the architecture firm he founded. He is noted for designing several buildings in Lodhi Estate in central Delhi, and that area is now nicknamed as Steinabad after his surname Stein. His education was from University of Illinois, and these are few of his notable buildings: IIC, IHC, IIM Kozhikode, Triveni Kala Sangam, and others. So our answer is Joseph Allen Stein. So that was all for week 3's questions, week 3's session. If anybody has any questions, you can drop your questions from week 3's related to any questions you have related to week 3's content. I would try to answer them to my best. Moving forward, a few of the previous live session questions that I couldn't properly give answers to because I was not aware, and a lot of those content was from next session content, so I had not read them either. So first was what is a casual meandering pattern? So this term came up in the planning of Gandhi Smarak Sangrahalaya by Charles Korea. So, what is a meandering pattern? This I mentioned in the last live session also, because I was not aware what casual meandering pattern was actually referring to at that point. But I know what meander is. Meander is basically when a river flows, so it flows in curves, right? So the curves that happen at the when a river is changing direction, the curve that happens, that's called a meander. So this is what a meandering pattern looks like. It's a pattern. It's not like it's not a trace of river right now. Taking that idea of that free flowing curve, this pattern is called meandering pattern. And then I learned about Greek meandering pattern, where they have used this curvilinear organic pattern and they turned it into a geometrical pattern, and where they kind of add or use. So when uh, they mention the idea of casual meandering pattern, what they mean over here is that in Gandhi Smarak Sangrahalaya, there is a courtyard in center and there is a grid layout of this 6 by 6 blocks. So instead of placing one building in each block in a symmetrical pattern, in a typical pattern, arranged like a square, a rectangle, or in any kind of other pattern, they have placed it randomly, staggered around the courtyard. And if you go through this, I mean, if you try to move along it, you will go from one place to another like this, like that. It doesn't make you go this, or this. No, you would have a free flow like it because it is around a courtyard. So that's why they have used the term meandering pattern, which just means that it is not regularly placed. It is very dispersed and it not in a typical shape and not in a typical pattern. That's what that term is trying to say. Next question was why low plinth height. This I answered in the last session also, and I would just like to answer it again. So what happened, low plinth height was one of the architectural characteristic of modernist houses in India, and that happened. There is no specific significance for a low plinth height, not that I found of, but it happened because earlier we had load bearing walls and other things, because of which we had heavier foundations and heavier plinths and other things. But with the onset of the use of concrete, and we came to a plinth height that was desired. So right now, as per Indian regulations, 450 is the minimum plinth height for residential and other kinds of buildings that you have to keep according to MBC. It's 450 mm, like 0.45 meter is the minimum plinth height that you should keep. So because of the technological advancement, because of the materials that we had, we could actually come to a plinth height that was desired enough to keep the water away from entering the house, and for water and for avoiding water seepage and other things. So we came to a plinth height which was lower than previously what we used to see. How does the color theme affect the type of architecture? So someone asked this question in last class. How does the color theme affect the type of architecture? And when I asked to give an example, they mentioned about churches in India, that usually churches are white in color, but in a lot of places in India they're red in color. So I was searching on it and I tried to read on it more. I didn't find any specific reason for churches being red in India. And interestingly, what I found out, in fact, was that it's not only in India that we have red churches. Around the world, a lot of places in US, in UK, in Europe, a lot of places they have red churches. I don't really know exactly the significance of it. There are a lot of theories. There is something called as red church also. So I'm not really aware of all those details. But what I think of is the if this red appearance, it is happening because of the use of stones, because of the use of exposed brickwork, then it's a very typical thing to India, because uh, at that time the architecture was kind of going in that position that we were using materials like exposed brickwork and exposed stonework. And in fact, we have a very beautiful exposed brickwork church in Goa. It's called Basilica of Bom Jesus. It's a huge building. It is magnificent in scale, and it's an all exposed brickwork. So I didn't find any typical reason why red churches in India, and why red churches, why white churches. But if I do ever find it, I will of course mention it again. But from what I was researching on, I didn't find it typical. So the type of mud brick which is used in Assam mud house, because one of the questions mentioned Assam mud house. So I was searching on it again, didn't get typical answers, but I got two kinds of ideas what might be happening over here. So they are not using mud bricks in Assam mud house. What they do is two techniques. One is this cob technique. What happens in cob technique is you mix your mud and other things that you are mixing with water, and then you make a ball and you place it, and you keep placing it, and you keep creating the wall. So you're not making a wall. So you're not making a brick first and then creating the house. You are directly making it out of mud. These are some of the techniques that I read about mud houses. I'm not sure in Assam what they specifically use, because there is really less documentation on this specifically, that how the Assam mud house is being created. So these are other kinds of mud houses techniques that I know of. But from the image, it was quite clear of Assam mud house that it's definitely not a brick house. So the first technique is to make these balls and then start creating this. Second technique is to create adobe bricks. Adobe is basically a brick. Is to create bricks and then place it. Make the brick, let them dry, and then place them. That's another. And the third way of using mud in mud houses is to create a structure of bamboo or other kinds of leaves or grasses, and then to give a huge thick plaster of mud over it. So in Assam's case, it could be a possibility of the use of either the cob technique or the plastering of thick mud on a structure of bamboo or other things, because bamboo is abundantly present in it. I didn't find a good documentation over it or typical Assam mud house, so couldn't really find the exact answer, but this would be the case. Next question, brief design of Gandhi Smarak at Rajghat by Vanu Bhuta. So there are three Gandhi memorials. One was in Gandhi Smarak Sangrahalaya by Charles Correa. One was by Habib Rahman in Barakpur, and the third was by Vanu Bhuta at Rajghat. So somebody asked the design of Gandhi Smarak at Rajghat. So there is no design to it specifically. It's just a memorial. Rajghat is a memorial complex, and this place is just a memorial for Gandhiji. So it was the first memorial dedicated to Gandhiji, and there is just a black marble platform. It was raised to mark the spot of his cremation on 31st January 1948, and there is an eternal fame at one end. It is located in Delhi's Ring Road, and it is officially known as Mahatma Gandhi Road. And there is a stone footpath that leads to the walled enclosure that houses the memorial. So there is no specific design for it. So it's just a black marble stone that has been black marble platform that has been made there, just to create this space as his memorial. Significance significance of a non-structural mushroom column. Yeah, so the specific non-structural mushroom column came out in Habib Rahman's Gandhi Smarak Memorial in Barakpur. So where they have a shikara like building. I'm sorry, I didn't add an image of that. Shikara like structure, and there is a huge cantilever, and there is a column. So in the live in the NPTEL lecture, sir mentions it that it's a cantilever. It's not a supported thing. It's not a structurally supported thing. It's a cantilever, and the column was just added there. So of course, somebody asked me that what was the significance if it was non-structural, then why give it? So the reason is to just for aesthetic purposes. Habib Rahman had learnt about this new technique of mushroom columns. He was probably inspired by it. This is not somewhere written, but he was probably inspired by it and he wanted to use it. So he just used it for aesthetic purposes, just for trying it out. Then last was a question when my laptop started misbehaving and I could not answer it, was classical modernism. Explain the term. This term was specifically mentioned in lecture 5 and this is what this person asked about, so I'll just explain it quickly. So classical modernism. So first is that when we are talking about this era, this is the era when during Lutyens' time, when Lutyens and Herbert Baker, they didn't want to go back to Indo-Saracenic architecture where there was heavy amalgamation of Indo-Islamic or Indian elements into the neoclassical plan, into the typical Western plan, and neoclassicism was rising in other countries. So they also started with the neoclassical plan, which is neoclassical was an era of architectural style which basically means new classicism, which means again bringing up the classic styles. So in neoclassical time, what they did was they used to bring out the things like Greek columns, Roman columns, typical plans and other things. Those features they used to bring up. So what was happening in at that time, at Lutyens' time, was that they were combining neoclassicism with modernism. Sorry, Lutyens was doing neoclassicism of typical colonial architecture, and then after that neoclassicism was being combined with modernism, and that is what was creating classical modernism. So what is classical modernism as per the lecture that sir has given, as per the PPT sir has given, is that the other architects who were working in Delhi at that time during Lutyens' time, who were not designing the iconic buildings like Lutyens and others, but were rather designing other kinds of buildings, colleges, housing and other planes. For one of those persona was Walter Sykes George. So what he did was he took Lutyens' classical model and he added modernism concepts to that. And that is what sir has mentioned as classical modernism. For example, this St. Stephen's College, New Delhi by Walter S. George, built in 1941. It's a typical neoclassical plan. It has Lutyens' ideas of exposed brick and the Lutyens' idea of using a few elements of Indian architecture on the typical neoclassical style or the typical Western plan style. So if you see this image, you see they have very minimal, and that they have chhatris over here. And how they have achieved modernism over here is by reducing the ornamentation. It's very minimal. It has very typical minimal features. There is really less ornamentation, and then they add, they take derivation from Lutyens' classical model ideas and added chhatris in the end, which gives this a little Indian look because we have one Indian element over there. So this is what sir means by when he says classical modernism. When he mentioned classical modernism in his lecture, This is what he typically meant with. Same is in this example. If you see that if in the building on the other side, I'm forgetting the name of this building. So it's again exposed structure, and you see just chhatris placed over there. So if you were to remove the chhatri from here completely, you would see that it's a typical modern building. So there, these chhatris are just adding as something from the past, something from the classical architecture style, and they are picking. They he picked on chhatris was because Lutyens was the one who was picking on dome and chhatris as typical elements. So he picked up chhatri and he added those here. So it's an adapted architecture, the classical modernism architecture. It's an adapted architecture to Indian climate. For example, if you see in the building on the right, there is a huge cantilever being given. If that cantilever was not given, so it could have been a proper minimalistic surface. But they had to give that cantilever because we need to protect that from Indian climate, Indian harsh sun. So the classical modernism architecture had a lot of elements. First was it was based on modernism. Second was it had Lutyens classic. It had elements from Lutyens classical model, and Lutyens classical model was neoclassicism plus adding Indian architecture, which was a typical colonial architecture part, and it was adaptive to Indian climate, like the materials, orientation, air circulation, and cooling. Use of exposed bricks was dictated by this aesthetic and need for climate responsive architecture. So that's all for today. If anybody has any questions, they can write in the chat box. Thank you for sitting here. So there are no questions, so we would be ending the session today. Right now, uh, thank you to everyone who joined, and I hope it was helpful.